Today marks the 75th anniversary of the end of the Battle of Stalingrad. Now, some people ask me to talk about propaganda, so I thought I'd talk about propaganda and the Battle of Stalingrad, because this posed a very important challenge for the National Socialistic propaganda, because it was the second major defeat the Wehrmacht faced. Yet the difference to the first one, which was the Russian counteroffensive in winter 1941, was that this time the generals couldn't be blamed as easily, because Hitler took the high command of the Wehrmacht, and he also mentioned in a speech beforehand that Stalingrad was already taken. So this time the responsibility couldn't be diverted from Hitler. And basically the propaganda started by stopping about the Battle of Stalingrad, because when in November the 6th Army was encircled in Stalingrad, there was mainly silence. So from around late mid-November 1942 to mid-January 1943, there was basically no information coming out of the official channels. There were only two sources of information. One was the letters from the soldiers, and I made a video about this, how the letters got out and in still, that the field postal system was still working. And the second were enemy broadcasts. So there were a lot of rumors going on, because the Red Army usually published new loss numbers, and there was actually the journalist asked a bit about this, and Gerd said, okay, that's only enemy propaganda, that's only lies. So another major issue was, it was Christmas time and winter time. Now this was the fourth Christmas in war. So generally around Christmas, you all know the phrase, the boys will be home at Christmas. So usually Christmas is quite a low in any war for any nation, because the men are at the front usually. And in this case particularly because there were a lot of rumors going on, nobody knew what was happening. And for the New Year's speech, there was also, Stalingrad wasn't particularly mentioned. There was a lot of euphemisms like hard fighting is going on and generalizations, but still it was too vague. Yet the reports came in that the public started to get distrust and there was a serious change in attitude. So they knew they had to act. Additionally, it was rather apparent for the high command that the army was sooner or later being destroyed or has to surrender, and for the Nazi party on the 30th of January was the 10th anniversary of taking over the power, because on this day Hitler in 1933 became Reichschancellor. So there was a lot going on, and the first changes were that in the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, High Command of the Wehrmacht, reports, there was a first indication you could read between the lines, because it was noted that the 6th Army was fighting to all sides. So if you knew, and at this point the population was already a bit cautious and could read between the lines, this basically confirmed that the 6th Army was encircled. And another issue was that they at this point started to establish an officer inside Stalingrad for keeping the morale high, a propaganda officer. I'm not sure if this was the official title, yet we don't know what he did there. What we know is that in general the soldiers in the encirclement wasn't reached by the propaganda, or if they were reached, they found it was a mockery. But back to this officer, he was flown out soon afterwards, and he reported, and he was famished. Yet he was completely famished, and Hitler and Goebbels actually were quite a bit shocked, because he was a high officer and he was like everyone else on malnutrition for weeks going on. So now the Nazis had to act, and what they did is, with Goebbels, they tried to create this heroic drama, this heroic sacrifice, like the Nibelungen, the fight of the Nibelungen, or the Thermopylae, the 300, the Spartans. To frame it this way, like the 6th Army sacrificed itself for the higher good for Germany. Now here's a little small detail. The word sacrifice in German means Opfer, but Opfer also means victim. So this Opfergang has a different connotation if you use it, because if you use sacrifice, in English it's one particular way, but you don't say victim. And another way to determine that there was a problem was that this speech on the 30th, the anniversary of taking the power, wasn't given by Hitler this time. It was given by Goebbels. And also Göring gave a special speech. So Hitler didn't show up. And so there was already a major change for people who looked like, okay, it's the 10th anniversary of Hitler becoming Reichschancellor and he doesn't speak. And basically, they also tried to bring out the book of this heroic sacrifice, but they used letters from the front, but they realized it's way too desperate and depressive. They couldn't publish it because they knew this would be terrible. Goebbels actually read the letters, and I think he wrote in his diary, and he was basically shocked to a certain degree, and at the same time he wanted to use it as this sacrifice. He was like extremely, it was like really odd. He like, okay, this is a real terrible situation, but how we can use it for our gain. And there's also this particular issue with you probably know that Paulus, the general in charge of the 6th Army, was promoted to General Field Marshal right before the end. And this basically meant, in a way, he should commit suicide. Because in German history, no Field Marshal was ever captured alive. But Paulus didn't do this. But this gets even far worse. Because since the 6th Army died for Germany in the Nazi propaganda, they had to be dead and not captured. So what does this mean? Helden haben tot zu sein, heroes have to be dead. All letters from POWs that came out of the Soviet Union were cut off. They were analyzed and then they were destroyed. So basically they tried to say, okay, everyone died there. And the problem was, one letter to a general's wife got through. And this was actually widely circulated. It was sent to other people that had missing in action soldiers from Stalingrad. So this was quite a major change for German propaganda, and it later culminated in the Wollte den totalen Krieg, do you want the total war speech from Goebbels, although Stalingrad was not mentioned in particular. So, but the whole strategy for the propaganda changed from the positive side more to the we have to fight, and more to a propaganda of fear and determination. Because before it was like in 1942 they already said, okay, we have to fight a few small battles and then the war is finally over. But in 1943 they changed, okay, we have to, now it's the hard way. And for the general situation that happened, what was very important in the general public, the monopoly for truth was lost. So people became very critical about the propaganda situation. And there was a low in the general attitude, but it recovered. So in summer and fall 1943, the situation was already way better. And we know from interviews with POWs in North Africa and Italy that the soldiers were actually quite resolute in the fighting spirit again, what the Allies. Because shortly after Stalingrad was pretty desperate. But then they recovered, and the interviews were actually quite surprised and shocked to a certain degree. So, as always, sources in the description. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe, because this is my second channel. And, well, thank you for watching and see you next time.